All right. Hello, everyone. I am Sarah McDermott, the founder of PRINDIE, and with me right now is Jackson Tisi, the director of the short live-action documentary Leon, and Leon Ford, who is the subject of the documentary. So thank you both so much just for taking time out of your schedules so we can talk about this very impactful film in a little more detail. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So to give kind of just a quick summary of the film, so Leon, about 8 years ago in 2012, you were driving, you were stopped for what was actually a very minor traffic violation. And basically what happened is a case of mistaken identity. The officers thought you were somebody else. And even though you had identification, you had all your papers to show them, they persisted and things escalated. And what wound up happening is that one officer opened fire. You were shot, I believe, 5 times and paralyzed from the waist down. But unlike what I think so many people in this situation would do, which would be to just really fall into this like sadness and anger and real tragedy of it, you have very mindfully and consciously been acting as like a force for good in your community. So I'm so glad, I'm so happy that you two found each other because I think this story is so powerful and so impactful. And Jackson, the way you handle, helping to present this story, I think is just so unique and insightful that I'm very grateful that you guys came together as a team to create this film, which I think is going to resonate with a lot of people. So my first question is exactly how did you guys come together and decide to do this as a film project?
Yeah, so I can answer that question. We have mutual friends. We have actually 2 mutual friends. One happens to be my financial advisor, whom Jackson did a piece with, and also another friend, Michael Farber, who runs a organization called Breakout. He's a co-founder, and so. My financial advisor, Richard, he's like, yo, this guy, like, he's my homie. You should meet him. Like, he's super dope. I know you want to tell your story. He's somebody you should connect with. And he actually connected us through a text message thread. But, like, I don't think we followed up with each other. We was like, hey, what's up? But nothing came from that. And then Michael, if I'm not mistaken, reached out and he was like, yo, there's something here, like we should do something. And from those 2 connections we got on the call and we've been connected ever since.
Yeah, we started this project a long time ago. Like we started at the end of midway through 2018 technically. That's kind of when we started talking, Leon. It's crazy it's been that long, bro, but it has been. It's wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
I feel like that's good for a documentary because I know sometimes it can be like years and years and years and years. So I feel like that's pretty good.
No, totally.
Yeah.
Especially with a 14-minute one. I mean, we spent a lot of time right around Christmas that year on the phone, just talking back and forth and getting to know each other. And it was a very interesting process. I don't usually like to hop into something if I don't like really connect. And it was pretty apparent off the rip that Leon and I had something to talk about and to do. I'm just grateful, always grateful to Leon for trusting me to kind of help him with this.
Yeah.
Leon, did you oh, sorry, go ahead.
Now, I was going to say that was a huge barrier for me for years. There's just like a huge exploitation of these types of stories, just because like they're trendy and foundations will support certain initiatives, and the Black Lives Matter movement and all these different, different components, right? So it was very hard for me to trust anybody with my story. But after connecting with Jackson and Michael and our relationship with Richard, we came together and I had to trust them, right? Especially to be in that space with me as I was talking to my therapist. That's like a very intimate conversation, right? And so for me to be open and willing to let them capture that, right? It took a lot of trust.
Well, that was also one of the first things we really talked about. Is Leon was like, "How do you see my story unfolding?" And I'd read all the articles, I'd watched all the news like clips that I could find. I dove deep, and then I talked to Leon a couple of times, and they asked me like, "How do you see this unfolding? And what is the film about?" And to me, it's like not about like police brutality, really. Like it's not about Leon being in a wheelchair as much. It's about Leon, you know, and like it's about mental health. And
Right.
those things are, of course, like they need to be there. It's like for context, but I feel like Leon, you're spot on. And we did talk initially about like kind of the exploitative nature of some of these stories. Like, you know, these cops don't deserve any more airtime than what they already got. You know, it's not about that. And also a lot of time has passed, and what Leon's doing now is different than where he was then, and showing the evolution. And that's why we even put it in a therapy session in the first place. It's like, it's truly about mental health. And I think that's obviously, Leon, you went through something pretty extreme that most people can't relate to. But I think everyone can relate to the sense of needing to take care of themselves and, you know, taking care of their mental health and being like a good steward of that. And so I think that's where like a lot of people that I've talked to are like, man, like it really inspired me. The amount of people that I know that have personally like gone to therapy for the first time because they watched this film is like pretty unbelievable. So I think we definitely like pursued the right direction with it.
That's so great to hear. I mean, as you say that, one of the things I really loved about the film, like you said, was you didn't sensationalize what had happened so much. It was so much more, Leon, about you helping others and being helped by by putting yourself out there and kind of working with, you know, we work with a group of young people who have also experienced violence and tragedy in their lives, working with your therapist. I really loved the quote at the very end of the film from you, and I know I'm not going to get it exactly right, but it was to the effect of like going to therapy was one of the most courageous things you've ever done. And that was actually going to be one of my questions is why to you it's like so important to get that message out.
It was important to get that message out because I was someone who, you know, read several self-help books, right? I went to church. I went to the mosque, right? I went to the Kingdom Hall. I have my older brother's a Jehovah's Witness, so I went to these different homes of worship, um, and the inspiration was there, but I didn't feel the healing, right? And so I felt that, you know, going to therapy, which is something within the African American community that, you know, a lot of Black men just don't go to therapy. You know, I mean, even when my sister passed away, I went back to school the day after her funeral. I was 13; she was 10 years old.
Mhm.
Never had a therapist,
Wow.
right? And so for me to go through so much in life, and you know, I found different coping mechanisms, but I still had this emptiness inside of me. And so it took a lot of thinking, a lot of reflecting, and a lot of courage to call a therapist and say, hey, I want to talk. You know, I want to heal. You know, I want a healthy heart. You know, and yeah, it completely transformed my life.
Wow.
Completely, and I've been going consistently for over a year and a half now, and it's I've grown from like leaps and bounds. You know,
Mhm.
I'm a completely different person than I was.
From even when we
Like
shot the film, probably, right?
oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, one of the biggest changes I see is that I used to hate Pittsburgh. I hated my city.
You were
You
ready
know,
to
so
leave
much.
when we were shooting. You were like so done with it.
Yeah, man. And I went to Europe last year, and I was over there for about 6 or 7 months. And now I love Pittsburgh, right? Like, I love Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's a beautiful city, and even the house, right? So, the house that we filmed in was completely gutted, and there's a scene in the film where I say, "Yeah, I feel gutted," and Jackson filmed, you know, the inside of the house, and now the house has been completely remodeled,
Wow.
and it's beautiful in there, right?
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's my life, right? For me going through therapy, I tore up so much of the things that weren't so good about my story, and I just rebuilt. I just rebuilt my inside. And I feel so much better.
It's the perfect metaphor. And I think so many people, I think they're afraid to go through that, like, gutting kind of process that sometimes has to happen before they can move forward. And there's a lot of fear around that. So being able to do that and show an example of having done that and come out on the other side is so important.
Exactly.
Did the
That same fear.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say the same fear is the fear that I had for the house. I remember when the house was gutted, and I was just like overwhelmed, and I was thinking about donating the house, the property, to a church, right? Because I was just that overwhelmed, but I stuck it out, and now I live there and I have a tenant upstairs.
Oh, that's awesome. It's perfect. So for the two of you, while you were making this film, in the very beginning, like when you first started to kind of plan and put this together, did you know that sort of like this mental well-being theme was going to be at the heart of it? Or did you think it was actually going to be more about being involved in politics, which I think for a brief while you were, or did it kind of progress as you were filming over time?
I mean, Leon, you want me to take a crack at this one?
Yeah, sure.
I kind of, we knew it was mental health pretty early on, and I pitched Leon the idea of like, dude, would you be okay with us filming in a therapy session? Because, as from a filmmaking perspective, I really just try to do the story justice and I really try my best to synthesize. We're synthesizing a lifetime into 14 minutes or whatever it is. It's kind of an impossible uphill battle, and I just want Leon's truth to be there and it to be on display, and then I also need to make it as palatable as possible, like stylistically. And I thought the therapy session was a really cool, honest device, and so we took a big gamble because Leon also hadn't really worked with this therapist yet, and now he sees Erica all the time, and we just got really lucky with how that turned out. But like a week or two before shooting, Leon just ghosted us, like completely off the map. Like we were worried about him, didn't know what was happening, and he was just needed to take care of himself. And he realized he wasn't going to run for city council anymore, like in the therapy session. It was a big thing that was weighing on Leon, correct me if I'm wrong on remembering any of this, but it was weighing on him in the weeks leading up. And I feel like, there was this semblance of, what am I doing to the film if it's not a story about politics? But it didn't matter. Like the film is so much better because Leon chose to take care of himself, and it ended up being kind of what we were talking about the whole time. At least in my opinion, like that's the beauty of documentary, is you're working with real people in real time, and you need to celebrate the real decisions that they make. And I think that every little thing that Leon did that changed or fluctuated the story as we were doing it made it what it is. I'm so glad this isn't like a political, like, triumphant film. Like, it's not about that at all. Like, I remember, Leon, you told me you were like, if I can't take care of others if I haven't taken care of myself.
Exactly.
And I don't know. That's just my perspective going into how the whole thing changed, because it was a couple different things, but there was this through line the whole time of like Leon taking care of his mental health.
Nice. I do like that. I love that it includes is sort of that you were thinking about the politics route, but then even just having enough self-knowledge to realize, like I think you say in the film, it's very toxic and it's not what you need. And I mean, I think you're affecting change in a way that does feel life-giving to you without having to be involved in that. And I think getting to see you make that choice and make the choice of like, you don't have to have it be that route, but instead you're taking care of yourself and you're going through the therapy and you're doing what you need to do to really be like healthy and whole and help others. I thought that was wonderful. So yeah, I'm glad it went that route too.
Thank you.
Yes. So Jackson, in your filmmaking career, so I know you do a lot in advertising and in music videos, and with the style of this film, I really thought you had a particular style for the way you put things together, and I'm curious about how that other work with ads and music videos just informs you when you're working on more of a passion project like this, a documentary.
Well, I was just, this is the most important film I've ever been a part of, and I think it probably will be for this film, and like Leon's trust, and like when you go into a documentary, like like this. Like so often with commercials and music videos, you pop in, you pop out. It's like a week of prep, a week, you know, it's like chaos, and it's like this little storm, and then you're out on the other end. And but with this, it's like, I don't know, like Leon Kandwani, like, you know, all these people that I've worked with, like I consider like really close friends at this point. And you know, it's just a totally different process, but there are some sensibilities, like similar people on the team. And for me, my documentary styles, I try to push it as close to narrative as I can, like with little, like, you know, the scene at the beginning. And then, you know, it is a mix, like you cut right from that, like remake of like using LJ actually, of Leon in the past, right to like raw dash cam footage. And it is like this hard mix. I've had many people, Leon, tell me like, yo, I didn't know if I was watching a narrative or a doc at first. And I think that's the place I kind of was aiming for. But again, it's like, you really freestyle it all the way through. And I'm only as good as the team that we had, like Luigi and Zoe. And we really had some all-stars work on this, even in post with Kath and, you know, Gavin on the score. And, you know, Leon was there the whole time. And like, we kind of just like collaborated all the way through. And Leon and I actually want to make some other stuff that's not necessarily documentary, but I think both of us just want to be creative and create things. And this was like a really incredible first step in doing that.
Very cool. I'm very excited to hear that you guys might do some other type of project together, because I loved this one so much. So I would love to see what comes out of any future collaboration.
Yeah, we'll do a comedy next.
What is it going to be?
We'll do a comedy next.
Okay, good. Yeah, there you go. Alleviate things. I was going to ask you too, because you were just mentioning about people being curious about narrative or documentary. There were definitely a few moments in the film I wanted to ask about, because I wasn't sure if it was real footage or if it had been, you know, like going narrative style, like some of the home movie kind of stuff. And then of course the police footage. I found myself wondering, like, is that the actual footage or was it something that you guys recreated?
No, that was real.
That was
the dash cam stuff, that's all real. That's all
Mhm.
real. That was like really important for us to show. Matt and I had a lot of questions in the edit room about like, what do we do? There are scenes that were left on the cutting room floor, but we thought it was really important that, you know, it's Leon's story. Leon survived this horrific thing. The least people can do is watch it and understand how brutal it really was. So I think that's why that footage is in there, but it's tough to watch, you know?
It is. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So for both of you, I mean, throughout the process of kind of making this film, we touched on this maybe a little bit earlier, but how do you think you have grown or changed just for the experience of having come through this and put together now this project that you're able to share and kind of put out there?
You want to hit it, Leon? You want to start?
Big question.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll go. I feel free now. You know, I feel my mind is liberated. I feel more creative, and I have a new family, right? Like me, Jackson, Farb. Like, I mean, we pretty much talk weekly now. We bounce ideas around, and we find innovative ways to support each other. And you know, there's a few different potential collaborations that's on the table right now. So it's like, yeah, I feel like this film was, um, it was symbolic of a new beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a new beginning for me, and I'm like focused more on my healing and not being a hero. And as I focus on my healing, then I'm able to authentically have a positive impact on the people around me, and through like social media or people that I speak to. It's not like, hey, I made it out of this and I'm so happy and I'm great, but I'm saying, hey, it was tough, it was hard, and these are the steps that I took to really live my truth and fulfill my purpose.
Yeah, and for me, this was like by far the hardest thing I've ever done, and it was like so worth it and paid off in a lot, like so many ways, even just in the friendship I now have with Leon. Like we talk sometimes, like I'm a kid from Wyoming, like our friendship is pretty improbable, and filmmaking really brings a lot of people together. It's just I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, like after making this film, I was like the week after, I was like, oh my God, like what the fuck did we just do? It was like, it was so much. We did it in 3 days. It was insane. There were months of prep for and it was like 16 to 18-hour days. And honestly, the crew, and it felt like every project I'd done up to that point was prepping me for this. Right. It really felt like they were all practice, like Hummingbirds, Good Medicine, all these films, Leon. Like, I don't think I could have done your film as well as we ended up pulling it off if me and Zoe and the whole crew had not basically done practice runs on films that they were still intense, but not just like the amount of work, the subject matter, or what we were trying to pull off, just the amount of like stress going into a therapy session where you just don't have. That was the first time I stepped away from interviewing, and just like letting that go and getting lucky with it was like, and Erica is like incredible. Like it was mind blowing, and like what a privilege that was to be on the inside. It just so many things. It felt like someone was really watching over us and making sure it went well. We just got lucky so many times, and I look back on it, I can't believe, I really can't believe half that stuff happened, and it went as smooth as it did. But the team was like everything, that small group of like young talented filmmakers who are all going to go on to have like incredible careers of their own. Like Leon and I are very lucky to have worked with these people.
Together.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask too, so about Erica and the therapy session, how was she about having somebody come in, during therapy? Like, was that something she needed to adapt to, or was she good?
So skeptical of us. She was so, yeah, no, totally. I mean, Leon, you probably have a better perspective on this, but the demeanor at the beginning versus the end was like night and day,
Yeah, I think like at some point for both of us, the cameras were not in the room. Mm-hmm. And yeah, she was like, yeah, who are these guys, and do you trust them? But yeah, it happened so organically, and they didn't know what was going to be said. Erica just went about, how she typically facilitates a conversation. And
yeah, we gave her no direction. We just set the camera down and shut up and like watched,
And I think we only had an hour booked, and we ended up being there for about 3 or 4 hours.
Dude, it was a lot. I mean, I can tell you from like having watched that whole session multiple times in the edit room, it was like 3.5 hours for sure. For sure. And it wasn't because she was like fishing for stuff. You guys just clicked that hard. You had a lot. It felt like an hour in the room, but it ended up being that long,
How many hours of footage did you guys wind up with total at the end? Because I think people who aren't familiar with like the filmmaking process, I think their minds are usually blown at like actually how much you have, and then you condense it down into like 14 minutes.
I mean, there were 2 whole scenes we cut. We shot a bunch at your grandmother's house, Leon, and we didn't use any of that. And we shot with Jason, and we didn't use any, and like there could have been a cut of this film that could have been closer to like 25 to half an hour, and it didn't feel as right. Like, it needed to be very focused on. The more hyper focused we got, the better the film felt. But there's so much that gets left on the cutting room floor in terms of like hours. I don't know what it ended up being, but it was most of the 3 days we were down there is on film. Like, we shot a lot.
Wow. So I know we got to wrap up in just a minute, but I wanted to ask you guys too. So I think you originally were planning to release this film in May, and then of course there were more events in the news that came out. There was Ahmaud Arbery, and there was George Floyd, and different things going on. How did that sort of affect, your plan for releasing this, and also just maybe how the film was either received or kind of the message that you knew you were putting out there?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, and I think Jackson can attest to this, this is a film that I believe is needed and necessary. However, it hasn't quite picked up the steam that we would like it to pick up. And it's even more interesting that I have personal relationships with a lot of the different activists and leaders within the movements But it seems like they are more focused on sharing pain, right? Sharing videos of people getting murdered on camera than they are, inclined to share something that, is in more of a direction of healing.
Or
And it's
listening to
quite,
someone that went through it, or listening to someone that actually survived it,
yeah. So
Really weird.
it's a little disheartening. I think when I would tell Jackson and Michael about it in the beginning, they were just kind of like, "Hey, just still reach out," And I did that, and I would show them screenshots and my correspondence with these, individuals with huge platforms, and for some reason they just refuse to get behind the film.
Wow.
Yeah, but we still released in May for mental health awareness, and then there's the other unfortunate side where like we kind of always knew it might be like that because like it's a very American thing, these shootings and this police violence, and it's always present and it's always happening, and it's been happening before Leon got shot in 2012, and it's continuing to happen. And I think people, we dropped it at a point of just such. We dropped it and then the world blew up around it. But like this stuff has been happening, and I think our timing was, it was not intentional. We dropped before Ahmaud Arbery was shot, and definitely before George Floyd, but unfortunately it became even more relevant. But I don't know, Leon, were you surprised? Like that, like this stuff happens all the time, man. Like I wasn't surprised that it had like more stuff was happening around the film.
Yeah, I get text or DMs or email for almost every police shooting. And so I'm, the outrage that we've seen in this country from George Floyd or from Ahmaud or from
Breonna Taylor.
the trickle effect of both. Yeah, Breonna Taylor. That's the outrage that I have to battle within myself every day. And so that's why therapy has been so important to me. And it's like maintenance, right? It's like I need it to maintain my happiness because all around me I'm reminded of the chaos. I'm reminded of the pain. I'm reminded of the trauma, the adversity. And so therapy has really helped me out a lot.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's really important to mention because I think a lot of people think of maintaining themselves in other ways. They're like, oh, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And people don't always take the time to take care of themselves, maintain themselves in that emotional way, which I think is so important. One thing that just struck me, like, obviously when I saw this, when all the rest is going on, is just the power of video. And Jackson, I think you mentioned before, just the power of film to bring people together. Videos people have shot on their phones of deaths and things, have certainly gotten like a nationwide conversation going. But then we also have films like this, your films, which are also starting up a conversation and maybe a different type of conversation, which, like you said, Leon, is hopefully going to be looking at positive and looking at ways to actually heal, and not just the devastating part, but how to actually help people come back from that. And I think that's such an important part of film and such an important part of projects like these. And again, I'm just so glad you guys got together and made this project, because I think it's fabulous. So yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for being here today. So for everybody watching, please remember Leon. So PRINDIE is taking place virtually this year. It's September 10th to the 13th. Absolutely make sure that you see this film, and thank you both so much again for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.